Okay, this video is the 3 smartest women of all time. And one thing that's going to confuse you, if you go on the internet and you look up the smartest women, they're going to have all these women with high IQs. High IQ is not the same thing as being a genius. When I say the 3 smartest, I mean the 3 best female geniuses of all time. A prodigy is somebody who learns fast, get great grades, graduates from high school a couple years early. Yeah, that's wonderful. They might have made some great achievements in their field, fine, but it's not the same really as a genius. A genius transforms the field. The field is different because they came along. And there's tons of women with high IQs. That's not the issue. I'm talking about a genius, somebody who's like a monomaniac that changes their field, transforms it, makes it better. In general, geniuses are much, much more common amongst men than women. Because traditionally women, up until, birth control pills, they were typically having like 10 children. It was routine to have 10 children. If you're busy running around taking care of 10 kids, you're not going to have a lot of time for academics. To be a real genius, you typically have to be a monomaniac, workaholic, and a loner. Another thing that often comes up is people say, well, girls are better students in school. I'm going to tell you, I don't really think that's true. And what I mean by that is the high school, even the college and the med school level, they favor conformist, polite behavior of going with the flow. But a genius is not polite. A genius most of the time says, this is a bunch of crap, this sucks, okay? What I mean by that is women are more agreeable. It's kind of a Jordan Peterson term, and it's true. A woman tries to get along. She's not going to argue or fuss with her professor. And whereas a real creative genius, most of the time, they have a sort of like an inner anger and resentment, and they're pissed off that their field is so backward and stupid. And you have to reject or go beyond the conventional in order to create something new. And that does not make you friends. You get in trouble for that. So what I'm trying to say is, a genius, a lot of times, they will not have had that good of grades. They will not have a lot of contacts or friends, and a lot of people will hate them and say bad things about them. I've seen that with medical geniuses that I've known. A lot of times they're hated by the highest ranking people in their own field, okay? And like I said, when I was young, I was a little bit of a prodigy, and people liked me because all I did was regurgitate the conventional knowledge. Then when I got older and I started to do things in a different way, then I got lots of enemies. I got banned from places, fired from places, because they don't want you bringing in anything new. But this is also why you don't see too many female geniuses. And when you do see a female geniuses, almost every single one of them, they say she's a bitch, they hate her, or she's crazy. So first of all, the best female genius of all time is Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand grew up in Russia. The Soviets destroyed her family business. I think her dad owned a pharmacy. She saw lots of people starving to death, brutalized, all these terrible things. It was just awful, the poverty and the suffering. Then she comes to New York and she sees skyscrapers and the Statue of Liberty, and she's like, oh, I love America. It's the greatest country that ever existed. And what I like about Ayn Rand is she paid her dues, man. She went back and read all this stuff about the Founding Fathers. She went back and read all the literature, philosophy. She really knows a lot. And she said that the USA was the best country that ever existed, ever founded, the best founders ever of anything in the whole history of the world. And that's all true. And like her best book, everybody knows her mostly because she wrote Atlas Shrugged, which is a masterpiece. Fountainhead was also a great book. So Atlas Shrugged is about the wealthy, smart people of the world saying, screw it, we're not going to, cave into this socialist BS anymore. All right, we're going to be independent. And then things kind of fall apart when they sort of step out of society. Fountainhead was an architect who was pissed off because he didn't want to be forced to build things that he didn't like. He wanted to do things his own way. But one of the places where Ayn Rand runs into trouble is she's a little bit reminds me of John Ruskin. So John Ruskin was the great art critic of the mid-1800s, okay? And he was a Protestant, and he would keep on wanting to kind of put Protestant as a religion above Catholic, okay? And then he would go visit all the Catholic art, and it was, for the most part, superior to the Protestant art, other than the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood of the Protestants. And so he would always go into contortions on trying to, make Protestant art sound better. And so what I'm like, how could he would criticize Michelangelo, for example, which is ridiculous. Okay, so anyways, what I'm getting at with Ayn Rand is in her book, The Romantic Manifesto. It's the best book ever written. Well, that one and The Art of Literature by Schopenhauer. on how to become a better writer, what is good literature, what is the characteristic features of a great book, of a great writer. And what's funny about the book is she just loves all the Christian authors. She says Victor Hugo's the best. To read his work, one feels as if they're walking into a cathedral. She goes on and on how great Fyodor Dostoevsky is and the other Christian writers, Quo Vadis by Henry Sienkiewicz, all this stuff. So, but then she says Christianity, she's not a big fan of Christianity. She says she's not a big fan of Christianity, but all she does nonstop is praise Christian work. And so it's kind of funny. And that's what I meant by she kind of turned Fountainhead into a little bit of a joke, is that he rejected sort of like the traditional style of building of the ancient Greeks and Romans and the Catholic style with the cathedrals. And then she said he practiced something, modernism, but modernism's a joke. Modernist building, they all say, Tom Wolfe in particular, it looks like an animal cage with a statue of a turd in front. So that's how she paints herself into a corner, and that's why I think her literature is not as good as her philosophy. But man, she's fantastic about picking apart, the kind of crap that she experienced, growing up with socialism and with, the word that starts with C, the ka, me's. So anyways, but she's magnificent. All you have to do, you can say whatever you want. Everybody's heard she's a bitch, she's selfish, yeah, fine. Just go to AZ quotes, like from letters A to Z, go to their quote page and just start reading their quotes. And to me, that's one of the things that I think is characteristic of a genius. They have words that are memorable. And when you start reading Ayn Rand's quote, you're going to go, holy crap, this woman is such a genius. She towers above other writers. She's not even good. She's magnificent. She's brilliant. It's like breathtaking how smart she is. And I don't say that often. I really don't. You won't hear me saying that hardly often about other writers and, about female writers. I actually don't think there's that many good female writers, but Ayn Rand, she's beyond good, spectacular in her philosophy. And I started then reading all her essays that I could. I watched tons of her videos. I read The New Intellectual. I read Return of the Primitive, all this stuff on her. Her essays were magnificent. And she would very often get me to rethink things, how she hated Nietzsche, the Dionysian, etc., how she loves the Apollonians. She is extraordinary. Okay, as she got older, she got a little bit crazy. She's smoking cigarettes all the time, and I know all the stuff that happened to her. But she was magnificent, and I don't think you should judge a genius by, the mistakes they made in life. All geniuses have some crazy failings, and I think it's because they put so much energy into their creative efforts that they neglect much of the rest of their life. Like she never had any children. Okay, but anyways. If you want to study she's the greatest female philosopher who ever lived. If you want to study a great, extraordinary female writer, extraordinary, Ayn Rand is well worth your time. Okay, and what she's basically saying is a person should have the right, she's the biggest proponent of individual rights and freedom. Her picture rightly should be with the Statue of Liberty. She's extraordinary. Okay, anyways, the next one is Ann Coulter. And people hate Ann Coulter. Why do they hate Ann Coulter? Because she believes in freedom and meritocracy. You have to remember, the people who hated her want to destroy freedom. They want to destroy meritocracy. So they're going to hate the lady who's the greatest proponent of it. The other thing that comes across about her that she's so smart is Ann Coulter, she could pick up a subject like evolutionary biology. And she basically wrote a couple chapters on evolutionary biology, and they're so clever and funny. Even though her background, she's a lawyer. It's amazing how clever and funny they are. It's like some of the funniest stuff I've ever seen written about evolutionary biology. I've read tons. I majored in evolutionary biology when I was in college. She's extraordinarily clever. She's extraordinarily funny. Her ability to turn things backwards. She kind of reminded me of Oscar Wilde, like with chiasmus, her ability to turn a phrase back on itself. She's extraordinary. I mean, there's no other writer that's like Ann Coulter. Now, there's some other writers who will write a good book. Okay, Amy Chua's book, The Tiger Mother. That's a good book, but she's basically just telling her story. And she does a good job of telling her story. She's a lawyer, too. So she's an intelligent woman. But there's nothing... She just told her story because she had a good story, and that's nice, but there's no brilliance. There's nothing like Coulter. She's not in the same ballpark. There is nobody like Ann Coulter. There is nobody like Ayn Rand. They're towering geniuses, okay? And when you start reading Coulter, you'll be amazed how smart she is. It's amazing how smart she is. She's beyond smart. She's a genius, okay? She's like in a whole other league of smart. Okay, I'm going to show you another lady, the smartest female doctor I've ever seen is this lady right here, Ann Osborn. Okay, all of them have a name of Ann. That's a good thing to name a woman if you want her to be smart. Okay, so this lady was incredible. She wrote one of the best medical textbooks ever written, her textbook of Neuroradiology. Up until that time, the textbooks were mostly text and a couple low-quality images. And she had magnificent images in CT, MRI, plain film, angiography, beautiful, elegant drawings, and it was very tightly correlated with the histology, looking at the findings under a microscope, okay? And very nice drawings. No one had done that before. It was like head and shoulders above all the other textbooks. And it was super popular, and she then started a publishing company called Amherst's Medical Publishing Company, which was for many years the best medical publishing company in the world. It got bought out by Elsevier. And I met her in person. She was super nice. She told the truth. She did what was right. There's a lot of overhyped female doctors these days, and they'll claim, oh, so-and-so is a genius, so-and-so is a genius. But when you look at their work, you'll see nothing original, nothing unique, nothing interesting. They just sort of, some of them are prodigies, some of them are good, some of them are corporate phonies. But what I'm trying to say is there's nothing unique coming out of them, okay? A real genius surprises you. A real genius does not go with convention. A real genius comes from a new direction that you haven't seen before, okay? That's a real genius. Like, you want to see a genius radiologist? Look at Thomas Nadich and his emphasis on neuroradiology. Look at Clyde Helms and his emphasis on ways to teach musculoskeletal imaging. Those are real geniuses, okay? Now, the other thing, too, is I know lots of women with really high IQs. I know lots of smart female doctors, and many of them are in the category of what I would call medical AOAs, like top 10% of their class, and they're competent at what they do. And, that's great. They're good, solid doctors in their field. Okay, but again, a genius is something different. A genius is somebody who changes the field, somebody who rewrites the textbooks in the field, who points out that the field's going the wrong direction, things like that. And you'll hear about other people like Mary Curie, the great Polish scientist who won 2 Nobel Prizes. And she discovered, radium, I think polonium and stuff. And, she was a great scientist. That's great. Okay, but here's what I ask you. At the end of the day, what does Mary Curie do for you? There's nothing there. I have tons of Ayn Rand's, pages and pages of her quotes memorized by heart. I could repeat them verbatim. I could sit here and talk for a couple hours repeating things I learned from Ayn Rand. And Coulter, she makes me laugh and has lots of funny quotes and said lots of good, clever things and told the truth about a lot of good stuff. I memorized Ann Osborne's textbooks, okay? They had a big impact on me, how clever Ayn Rand was, how funny. And, she's like the female Oscar Wilde, and Coulter and Ann Osborne inspired me a lot of my ideas about writing a textbook, and I've incorporated those into my own books. Okay, and then, but Madame Curie, there's nothing she said or did that has any usefulness to me. Okay, Marilyn Vos Savant, and now she gets labeled the so-called highest IQ, and I think that's an insult. I don't know what her real actual IQ is, but I've read a bunch of her columns, I've gone through her quotes. There's nothing there, Most of them are all derivative, like quotes I've heard before. They just get attributed to her. There's nothing interesting or deep. Okay, maybe she's a witty talk show host. That's nice, but, I don't think she's a genius. I don't think she's even that interesting. So anyways, if you're interested in studying geniuses, I spent a long time studying geniuses. These are the ones I think you'll find. Well, you probably won't get that much from Ann Osborne unless you're a doctor or a medical scientist. But from Ayn Rand and Ann Coulter, you'll be amazed at how useful it is to study those two. Anyways, hope that's helpful.